After the disappearance of 23-year-old Hannah Potts, an investigation involving the FBI began. The case received a lot of media attention, and the unraveling of the mysterious disappearance shocked many people. Hannah's family had no idea who would eventually be charged. Hannah lived with her large family in Gibson County, located in the southwestern American state of Indiana. Many people who lived there farmed, and the Potts family was no exception. They had their own small farm, and Hannah's parents thought it was a good and safe place to work, live, and raise their children. It was indeed a safe place, but as you know, sometimes things change. The summer of 2020 was a turning point for the Potts family, after which their lives changed forever. On the night of July 23rd, 24, Hannah couldn't sleep. She told her mother she was going to walk around the farm, look at the animals, and maybe take some pictures, then took her phone and camera, left the house and headed for the barn. In the morning, the family discovered that Hannah was not at home, and a post appeared on her Facebook page that shocked everyone. She posted a video which, judging from the image, was recorded in the dark, as the picture is a black screen throughout the video. Let's listen to her heart-wrenching plea.
Mom, are you there? Hello? Mom, if you can hear me, please say something. I really need to hear your voice. Something's happened. I was out taking those pictures of animals. And this guy came out of nowhere. It was the same guy I saw yesterday morning in the maroon car. He grabbed me and he pushed me into the trunk. Oh God, where is he gonna take me? Mom, please. Okay, think, Hannah, think. He's black. He's about Jerry's height. The Jerry I work with, and his voice is deep, and the way he called me baby girl just sent shivers down my spine. I don't like it. Please, Mom, if you're there, can you please just say something to me? I'm in a room. There's a little light, 4 walls, and okay. I don't think they know I have the phone, so you gotta tell the cops everything. That you gotta show them this video so maybe they can find me. And I don't know. What did he say? He said something about Ohio. Oh God, Mom, I love you. Tell Dad I love him too. Take care of Jinxie for me. Please, if I don't make it back, I love you. I love you so much.
Hannah's parents immediately contacted the police, taking into account all the circumstances and the fact that in such cases even minutes can change everything. The FBI got involved in the case. The video quickly went viral on social media, and the same day Hannah's kidnapping was covered by the country's major TV stations. Extensive media and social media publicity helped attract a large number of volunteers who, along with the Potts family, distributed several thousand informational flyers on the first day, reporting that Hannah was last seen at home around 2 a.m. She was wearing a gray shirt and sports pants. It was also reported that the person who abducted her was driving a maroon car. Police appealed for anyone with any information to come forward. Hannah's family utilized every possible resource to locate her. One of these resources was social media, through which information about the kidnapping spread with great speed. Hannah had a twin sister named Lauren, and she published a post calling for help, which stated, "With a broken heart, I never thought I would ever be posting something like this. I need help, Facebook friends. Please share this post. Share this photo. Please help us." My twin sister, Hannah, posted a video describing she had been kidnapped this morning. If you have seen her or heard from her, please contact Princeton, Indiana Police Department or my family. I miss you, Hannah. Please come home. When the FBI tried to track Hannah's cell phone, they found that on the day of her abduction, a cell tower located about a couple miles from the Potts family home was receiving a signal from her phone. Hannah posted the video on her Facebook page around 6 a.m. By then, she was already being held hostage, and her phone signal was still being picked up by a cell tower located close to the house. This meant that Hannah was being held in a room not far from her family's home. Police were desperately searching for a man in a maroon car, but it was impossible to find a man fitting that description living within a 5-mile radius of the Potts family home. While researching Hannah's life and trying to find out if anyone she knew could have been involved in her disappearance, detectives discovered that prior to her disappearance, she had been in close contact with a 34-year-old woman named Maria Hopper, who lived just a mile from their home. When investigators arrived to speak to Maria, she confirmed that she knew Hannah, but said she had last seen her a few days before the abduction. It seemed like another dead end, but when a report from a cell phone carrier came into police possession, and when access was gained to Hannah's social media page where she posted her heartbreaking plea, it became clear that Maria Hopper had lied when she said she had seen Hannah a few days before the abduction. Hannah disappeared in the early morning hours of July 24th. 2 days later, on the morning of July 26th, several police officers went to Maria Hopper's home. She again told the police officers that she knew nothing about Hannah's whereabouts. Also at Maria's home was her boyfriend, 45-year-old Joshua Thomas, who told police officers that he did not know Hannah at all. Officers asked Maria for permission to look around the house. Reluctantly, the woman did give her consent, but immediately stated that Hannah was not in her house. The police saw nothing suspicious inside, except for the stairs in the kitchen leading to the basement. Maria said that there was nothing but unnecessary things in the basement, but the law officials decided to inspect the basement with their own eyes. Among the dusty items in the basement, the police noticed a sheet of plywood that was different from everything else. There was no dust on it, and it gave the impression that this sheet of plywood had not been in the basement as long as all the other items. The plywood seemed to be blocking the passage to another part of the basement, and as one of the officers began to move it away, Maria Hopper made an important announcement. But before we move on, we need to turn our attention once again to the recording made by Hannah. When the video was shared on social media, observant people immediately noticed the weirdness and illogical actions on Hannah's part. She recorded a 6-minute video. Many wondered why she was wasting precious time recording the video instead of calling 911. Why didn't the kidnapper search her and take her phone? What was she even going to take pictures of at the farm at 2 a.m? While recording the message, she initially said she was kidnapped by a man, but after a few minutes, Hannah is heard saying "they," as if there were multiple kidnappers. She logged onto social media, so she had internet access at the location where she was being held and could have pinpointed her location, but for some reason, she didn't. Of course, the authorities also paid attention to all these oddities, but because everyone behaves differently under stress, the investigation was in full force, and until proven otherwise, Hannah's disappearance was considered a kidnapping. The truth was revealed when the police gained access to Hannah and Maria Hopper's correspondence. When the officer wanted to see what was behind a sheet of plywood in the basement of Maria's house, she admitted that Hannah was hiding there. The police officer pushed the plywood aside and ordered her to come toward him. When Hannah came into the light, The officer saw that she had fully functioning handcuffs on her right wrist and fully functioning shackles binding her ankles. The young woman immediately admitted to police officers that no one had kidnapped her and that she was sitting in the basement of her own free will. As it turned out, Hannah had planned her own kidnapping, in which she was assisted by Maria Hopper and Joshua Thomas. This became clear from their correspondence on social media networks. The tone, content, and context of the messages read similar to a fantasy fiction story, police wrote in the arrest records. All three were taken to the police station for further investigation. Of course, the question on everyone's mind was, why did she do it? Hannah told the investigators that she was writing a book and had decided to stage her own kidnapping for inspiration and to learn how kidnapped victims feel. Maria and Joshua were characters in her story and helped her organize everything. They hid her in their basement, brought her food and drinks, and according to Hannah's own direction, destroyed her cell phone so the police couldn't trace it. The heartbreaking video that Hannah posted on her Facebook page was pre-recorded, and according to Hannah herself, she rehearsed for about a week before recording it. None of her family members knew what she was up to, and after the truth was revealed, the Potts family apologized to everyone who helped in the search and to everyone who was worried about Hannah. Her sister Brittany wrote a public apology on her social media page. In particular, it included these words: "As news is getting out there about Hannah being found, I need to make a public statement addressing it. I publicly disown nor want nothing to do with my sister going forward. She is dead to me. I hope she is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. My family feel extremely embarrassed and hurt by her actions, and the fact she tried pinning this on a person of color. I pray no black man with a maroon-colored car was targeted due to her blatant lie. She has caused so much grief to my family and others, and for that, shame on you, Hannah. You made my 6-year-old son cry thinking something bad had happened to you. My 6-year-old baby that loved you so much. I hope you are prosecuted to the fullest extent. I have no words. I just feel like I owe the public an apology. I am so angry and embarrassed." While in the basement of her friend's home, Hannah kept a personal journal in which she admitted that she knew her social media post would go viral. Hannah Today, we will look at a case that took place in Minnesota back in 2013. 30-year-old Kira Steger was employed as a store clerk at a clothing store located in the Mall of America. She was passionate about her job and never skipped a shift, so when on February 23, 2013, she didn't come to work, her co-workers got worried. They tried to get in touch with Kira, but she didn't return their calls or text messages, and the police were soon informed that she was missing. Kira K. Steger was born November 19, 1982 in Des Plaines, Illinois. She was the daughter of Marcy and Jay Steger, who described her as a lively, dedicated, and sweet daughter. Kira was employed at the Mall of America and worked for 2 stores there, Wet Seal and most recently, Delia's. Her co-workers were not only great friends, but Kira considered them part of her family. Kira possessed a unique talent for recognizing people's strengths that they themselves didn't notice. She planned and hoped for a promising future, which looked bright and serene. Sadly, all her dreams ended in an instant when Kira mysteriously vanished. On Thursday, February 21, 2013, Kira had a shift at work. Her co-workers said she had been feeling good and planned to go to a nice restaurant with her husband after the store closed. Kira and Jeffrey Trevino got acquainted 3 years ago. They immediately ignited a spark between them and started a romantic relationship, which ultimately resulted in a wedding. Generally, Kira and Jeffrey seemed to be a happy and stable married couple. There might have been occasional disagreements between them, but it all was kept within their own circle. Neither relatives, friends, nor co-workers were aware of them at the very least. 2 days later, on Saturday, February 23rd, when Kira did not come to work, her co-workers were concerned because such behavior was not typical of her. She was on time, strict with herself and others, never tolerated being late, and adhered to her schedule. Having failed to reach Kira, her co-workers called Jeffrey, but he had no idea where his wife had gone. As per Jeffrey, Kira had left the house the previous morning and had not been back since. It wasn't really worrying to him because Kira had a tendency to occasionally disappear for a day or two. She would stay the night at a friend's house or go to a relative's place unannounced. One thing that might have caused worry was the bad weather that day because it had been snowing heavily. Jeffrey suggested that maybe there was something that could have happened to her on the way. Perhaps her car got stuck and her cell phone battery ran out of power. On the same day, having received no news from his wife, Jeffrey filed a missing persons report and got in touch with Kira's family. Her family members were surprised by the mysterious disappearance of their loved one, and it was a big blow to them. Having received a missing persons report for Kira Steger, detectives immediately got to work. As it is common in such cases, the investigation started with questioning the spouse and searching the nearest surroundings. This was no exception. Detectives went to Jeffrey's residence to talk to him. Jeffrey informed detectives that on Thursday, he and Kira were looking to have some time together. They had dinner, conversed, played bowling, and eventually left the mall. By Jeffrey's account, he and Kira headed home straight away as Kira intended to watch a movie. Jeffrey also told detectives that his wife left their house the next day, which was a Friday, around 8:30 a.m. An event was scheduled at work, and her mandatory presence was required. She was conducting herself as usual, and he didn't see anything strange. Jeffrey found it nothing out of the ordinary that Kira would disappear from time to time, although he didn't even know where she was or who she was spending time with. They had been having relationship problems for a few months, said Jeffrey. However, he didn't see it as serious or alarming, considering it to be just minor arguments that occur in all families. The detectives started asking Jeffrey who Kira might be staying with, asking if she might have had a lover. The man refused this suggestion, as he had personally asked Kira about this and got a negative response. In Jeffrey's words, he really loves his wife and trusts her. The investigators passed on all the information they managed to collect about Kira and her car to the on-duty patrols. The detectives went to the Mall of America themselves in order to confirm the credibility of Jeffrey's words and possibly pick up some clues. Mall of America is among the biggest shopping malls worldwide. It is situated in Bloomington. It features 520 stores, theme parks, an oceanarium, movie theaters, a golf course, and much more. Therefore, it's not surprising that the mall is fitted with numerous security cameras. Knowing at what time Kira had left work on February 21st, the detectives looked into that moment. The footage showed nothing out of the ordinary. Jeffrey's account held true. He met Kira after work and they hung out at the mall for a while, then went down to the parking lot and drove away. There were no arguments between them, and the evening appeared to have gone fine. Nothing is as bad as just waiting without any knowledge of what's going on, and with each successive day, The anxiety for Kira's life was getting progressively worse. Lacking any news from her and having grown tired of waiting, Kira's family traveled to Bloomington in an effort to try to help with the investigation. They had flyers printed with her pictures on them, posted them on poles, and distributed them to passers-by on the street. Their objective was to attract as much attention as possible to the search for Kira. They realized they could not simply stand by, but had to do everything they could to find their loved one. While Kira's family was distributing leaflets, the investigators continued their inquiry. When interviewing the couple's neighbors, officers noticed a surveillance camera installed on one neighbor's house. The camera rotated sideways, and in one of its angles, it captured Kira and Jeffrey's home. Thus, the investigators asked the homeowner to copy the camera footage for them, as they hoped to uncover some clues from it. In the meantime, a cell phone company's records arrived and provided investigators with a new lead. According to Kira's phone records, she had another man in her life besides Jeffrey. He turned out to be Ryan Wendt, who was the manager of the same store chain in one of which she was employed. They had a very intense and lengthy relationship and corresponded frequently. Police were able to ascertain that Ryan Wendt was out of state, and while a search for Kira was ongoing, Ryan was traveling in his car towards Colorado. This man was of major relevance to the investigation, because in addition to having a romantic relationship with Kira, he also moved out of state the same time she disappeared. Maybe it was a mere coincidence and nothing more, or perhaps things were completely different, and his escape hides something behind it. It is the investigators who would have to find the answer to that question. Regardless, the detectives managed to reach Ryan, and he consented to appear for questioning in Colorado, where he was asked many questions. He stated that he last contacted Kira while he was driving his car across South Dakota and exchanged texts with her. These text messages had been sent shortly before Kira's disappearance. Upon reviewing the timing of the text messages, detectives determined that Kira had been in contact with her new lover just as she was dining with her husband. It was abundantly clear from the correspondence that Kira was increasingly becoming distant from Jeffrey. The investigators examined Ryan's phone to determine his location with respect to the cell towers and reviewed his credit card statements. It appeared he was really out of state that particular evening and had no way of being connected to Kira's disappearance. He was released and dropped from the list of suspects on that basis. The timestamp of the messages revealed that Kira was still texting with Ryan even when she arrived home with her husband. However, their communication ended after 11:44 p.m., and since then, Kira's phone has been inactive. Meanwhile, a different team of investigators was getting ready to examine the video footage from the surveillance camera installed on Kira's neighbor's residence. This camera captured much of the street, sweeping left and right. However, it was turning much too quickly, and that made observation difficult since if the investigators spotted something suspicious, the camera would rotate to the other side in an instant. Jeffrey and Kira's house was seen only for a brief few seconds as the camera shifted to the right. Jeffrey stated that after eating dinner and bowling, he and Kira went home, watched a movie, and retired to bed. However, when investigators reviewed the video footage, they noticed that right after 2 a.m., Kira's car reversed into the yard. Because of the low quality of the footage and the constant motion of the camera from side to side, it was hard to tell precisely what was happening on screen at that time, but the car soon moved away from their house. Jeffrey attributed the night drive to the fact that Kira had told him to pump gas in her car prior to her commute tomorrow, so he went to the gas station. Surprisingly enough, his story was true. He was really seen at the gas station at around 3:30 at dawn. However, the detectives discovered that after leaving the gas station, he didn't return home, but for some reason made his way towards the highway. It is unclear where he headed next. The neighbor's camera did not record him coming home, but it could have been a mere coincidence as it was rotating constantly. Thus, it is possible, theoretically, that Jeffrey could have gotten back home later in the day when the camera was facing the other direction. When investigators looked at the footage further, they observed that Kira's Chevrolet drove away at 9:21 a.m. Disappointingly, there was no way to see who was at the wheel. A missing person report was filed with police on Saturday, February 23rd, and the police department got a call on Monday, February 25th, to report the finding of a suspicious vehicle. Near the shopping center where Kira was employed, there are two multi-story parking lots. Security guards noticed that a certain car had been parked there for several days and requested a tow truck. The tow truck driver proceeded to examine the car before picking it up and spotted suspicious-looking red smudges on the trunk lid, then called the police. That vehicle turned out to be Kira's white Chevy. There wasn't that much blood, just a few small stains, but it was there, and that was a very bad sign. Kira's purse, which was recovered from her dumped car, had divorce court forms that looked like they had been downloaded from the internet. Additionally, a small dark item lying in the snow behind the car caught the investigators' attention. When they got closer, they saw a rolled-up trunk mat that had dark-colored stains on the reverse side. DNA testing determined that it was Kira Steger's blood. With regret, the investigators began to realize that Kira was most likely no longer alive. This horrible discovery was a severe shock to her family and friends. Their last hope of seeing Kira again was lost. But with this, myriad questions arose in their minds. How did she die? Did she suffer? And who could have resented her enough to have robbed her of her life? The absence of Kira's body compounded the matter, for it was much more difficult to endure the sorrow that had befallen them without it. The detective's top priority now was to identify the person who abandoned the vehicle in the parking lot. The car drove away from the house at 9:21 a.m. Approximately 20 minutes later, the mall's cameras captured it. There were no cameras in the lot where the car was discovered, but there was a camera directed at the path that led to the car. The camera was located near where Kira's car was located. After viewing the footage from that camera, the detectives noticed that a few minutes after the white Chevrolet drove into the parking lot, a man with a hood covering his head appeared in the footage. It was fairly cold, and it didn't seem odd that the man was in a hoodie, but the detectives wanted to track where he was headed. It was seen that the hooded man made it across the street and walked to a taxi stand where he had a brief conversation with one of the drivers, then got into the car and drove off. The police were able to determine which company the cabs parked in the parking lot of the shopping center belonged to. Based on the time of the hooded man's interaction with the driver, it was not difficult for the police to identify the license plate number of that particular vehicle. All of the cabs were outfitted with GPS tracking devices, which revealed that the hooded man concluded his trip a block away from Kira and Jeffrey's house and then got out of the car after paying cash. As it left the neighborhood, the cab was caught in the lens of the same camera that had partially filmed Kira and Jeffrey's home. After 2 minutes, a hooded man entered the frame. The low resolution of the footage made it difficult to see his face, but what was striking was the white logo on his hoodie. As the investigators kept viewing the footage, they saw the hooded man walk into the house where Kira and Jeffrey lived. Kira had been missing, which made it nearly certain that the hooded man was Jeffrey. After securing a search warrant, the law enforcement officers headed to the house. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary, unremarkable house, but that was only at first glance. Under closer examination, the criminalists started to find dark red stains in the bedroom of the spouses. There were a few stains on the wall beside the bed and around 100 of them on the mattress. It was apparent that the bedroom had recently been rearranged and cleaned. When the forensics team sprayed luminol, the floor carpet was practically glowing. It had a lot of bloodstains on it that could not be detected by the naked eye. These stains originated in the bedroom and extended into the other side of the house. Forensics confirmed that it was Kira's blood, and this further convinced investigators that she was no longer alive. Besides searching the inside of the house, police also examined Jeffrey's car. The car itself didn't have any blood in it, nor did they notice any evidence of a struggle, yet they still managed to find something of interest. A gas station receipt was found in Jeffrey's car, issued an hour and 40 minutes before Kira's car was left in the mall parking lot. Based on the receipt information, the purchase was made with Jeffrey's card. Detectives proceeded to that gas station to review the security footage. The footage captured Jeffrey filling up his car, then going inside and withdrawing cash from an ATM. This footage provided a glimpse of Jeffrey's face and showed that he had a logo on his jacket, in the chest area, that looked like the logo on the man from the earlier footage. On the basis of this recording and all evidence found in the house, 39-year-old Jeffrey Trevino was placed under arrest. He was brought to the station for questioning and was now the prime and only suspect. Immediately from the interrogation room, Jeffrey reached his attorney, who advised him to exercise his right to remain silent. The police had sufficient evidence to charge him, but the most compelling evidence of his guilt would be the body. No one had any doubt that Kira was dead. The police, together with Kira's family and some volunteers, spent months searching for her. In late March, as the snowdrift started to clear, volunteers discovered a strange bag by the roadside at Keller Lake, a few miles from Trevino's house, and called the police. The bag contained a bloodied pillow, a shirt, and a bra. The forensics team linked the finding to Kira, as her DNA was detected on the items. The lake was still encrusted with ice, which hampered the search, but still divers surveyed the water body. Still, they found no remains in it. The area around the lake was searched multiple times using 4 search dogs trained to find bodies, but this too was fruitless. 2.5 months following Kira's disappearance, on May 8, 2013, the St. Paul Police Department got a disturbing call. The male caller told the operator that he had seen what appeared to be a dead body in the Mississippi River. What police officers recovered from the water did actually prove to be a body. There were no clothes on it. Dental records determined that it was the body of Kira Steger. She suffered severe blunt force trauma to her forehead and a fractured index finger on her left hand. Because of the degree of decomposition, the medical examiners were incapable of establishing an exact cause of death. Using the new evidence, investigators tried to reconstruct the timeline of events leading up to Kira's death and the events that followed. They speculated that when Kira and Jeffrey came home, he became aware or saw that she was texting someone else. Kira was unwilling to show the correspondence to her husband, at which point he forcefully snatched her phone away from her and broke her finger. After seeing the romantic correspondence, Jeffrey grew even more enraged and, in a fit of anger, took Kira's life, and then tried to conceal evidence of the crime. He used her car to drive to the house, put the body in the trunk, then went to a gas station, and from there to the river, where he disposed of the body. He subsequently drove back home, dumping the bag containing Kira's pillow and clothes along the way. The next morning, he went to a gas station and took out cash from an ATM because he knew that after he left Kira's car in the mall's parking lot, he would have to pay for a cab, and it would be better to do so in cash. After disposing of Kira's car, Jeffrey went home and worked the rest of the day on cleaning the house. With his trickery, Jeffrey intended to convey the impression that Kira had driven away in her car by herself that morning and that she was perfectly fine. However, thanks to surveillance cameras, his plan failed. In October 2013, a jury convicted 39-year-old Jeffrey Trevino, concurring with the defense that his acts were not premeditated and that the crime was the outcome of a heated and sudden argument following the discovery of his wife's infidelity. Prior to the sentence being announced by the judge, Kira's family members made their statements. "This monster is a calculated criminal," said Carrie Ann Steger, Kira's sister. "He deserves no mercy." Kira's mother, Marcy, stated that Trevino certainly showed her daughter no mercy. "He dumped my daughter like a piece of trash into the nation's most polluted body of water," she said. Still, her father, Jay, said whatever the punishment, it will never make up for the pain Trevino has caused their family. "No matter how much time you give Mr. Trevino, it's not enough. Never enough," he said. In November 2013, Jeffrey Trevino was given a 27.5-year prison sentence. He will become eligible for parole in 2031. In this video, we will cover events that took place in Wisconsin on April 13, 2018, 21-year-old Shannon Money was expected to pick up her little brother from school, but she didn't arrive to pick him up, and her phone was switched off. Shannon's parents had absolutely no clue about what they would be dealing with when they reported their daughter missing to the police. Shannon Money was born on April 6, 1997, to Anshu Money and Vijay Money. She was a small child when her parents immigrated from Fiji to the United States. Her family had resided in the town of Waukesha, in southeastern Wisconsin. This small and peaceful town was the place where Shannon was raised and attended school. She was intelligent, pretty, and very social. Her parents believed that Waukesha was the ideal place to raise their children. In 2015, Shannon completed her high school education and enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. She enjoyed working to support people and was interested in working as a social worker. In spite of her demanding schedule, Shannon joined her father in working for an organic food company. One day, while at work, she was introduced to Quentin Neal, 26, who was there to apply for a position. Similar to Shannon, Quentin had a passion for helping people. Shannon dreamt of one day constructing a shelter for women and children, and Quentin also said he wanted to make a shelter for his community. With common interests and perspectives on life, Shannon and Quentin grew close quickly. The friendship between the two developed into a romance. Shannon was delighted to have met Quentin, and before long they began living together. Quentin cared for Shannon, and she in turn made sure that their relationship was a happy one. They were making plans for their future until the day when Shannon disappeared. On April 13, 2018, Shannon didn't go to pick up her little brother from school and didn't come to work. Her phone had been turned off, and she hadn't told anybody that she would be missing her work shift. On the exact same day, her parents headed to the police station after they were unable to figure out on their own where their daughter was. At the beginning, detectives speculated that because of Shannon's young age, she might have simply escaped or gone somewhere with friends. However, her parents dismissed the suggestion because such behavior was unusual for their daughter. She simply wasn't the kind of person who would just switch her phone off and have fun with her friends while her family were worried. Shannon's mother provided investigators with details that led them to take the case much more seriously. At the time she disappeared, Shannon was 4 months pregnant. Women who are pregnant don't typically disappear unless something bad happened to them. Some money, some of her documents, and other valuables were still in Shannon's room, and that was another troubling factor. Shannon's parents informed investigators that the child's father was 27-year-old Quentin Neal. However, when they reached Quentin by phone, he told them he himself had no idea of where their daughter might be. Shannon had recently been living at her parents' house, and Quentin said he hadn't seen her at all that day. The investigators themselves phoned Quentin and requested that he come to the police station because they had questions they wanted some answers for. Quentin appeared anxious and said that he would immediately get to the police station. When he arrived, Shannon's parents were still there. Quentin informed the investigators that the last time he had seen Shannon was over 24 hours ago, when she was leaving his house and planning to pick up her little brother from school. They had only exchanged a few text messages and had not been in contact again since then. When investigators inquired of Quentin where he suspected Shannon might be, he couldn't provide an answer because Shannon's life was concentrated on school and work, and until that day, she had always stayed in touch with her loved ones. However, Quentin remembered that there was another guy who expressed interest in her, despite being aware that she was in a relationship and expecting a child. This guy, according to Quentin, never quit pursuing Shannon's affection, even when she asked him to leave her alone. The investigators immediately labeled this guy as a person of possible concern, since jealousy often results in reckless behavior. The next day, police started interviewing Shannon's friends in an effort to uncover new leads. Information about the search for the young pregnant woman was distributed to all police stations in Wisconsin. That same day, the first unsettling revelation was made. Shannon's car was found in Milwaukee, approximately 20 minutes away from her home. Forensic investigators inspected the vehicle thoroughly, inside and out, but found nothing suspicious. It showed no signs of carjacking, a struggle, or any other evidence of a crime. Shannon's purse and her cell phone were not in the car. However, fingerprints belonging to 3 different people were found. One belonged to Shannon, the other to Quentin, but who the other fingerprints belonged to was unknown, and the police had to identify the person who left them. That same afternoon, the guy who was mentioned by Quentin was taken in for questioning. While he said that he was very upset to hear that Shannon was missing, he denied what Quentin said, claiming that he and Shannon were merely friends and that he had never attempted to pursue a romantic relationship with her. When pressed by investigators, he admitted that he had once confessed his love to Shannon, but she told him that they could only be friends. Since then, he hasn't sought to take any steps to gain Shannon's affection. The guy's fingerprints were compared to those in Shannon's car, and they indicated a match. However, he justified this by stating that Shannon frequently gave him rides to the university, and therefore, it was no surprise that his fingerprints were found in her car. He also said that when Shannon went missing, he was 100 miles away from Waukesha, attending a baseball game. The investigators checked his alibi, and when it was confirmed, they ruled him out as a potential suspect. The investigators soon received a surprising and very crucial lead in this case. Anshumani found her daughter's Apple Watch and managed to look at some of Shannon's text messages, then decided to visit the police station again. She turned the watch over to investigators for examination. When the investigators started reviewing Shannon's most recent text messages, they uncovered some very interesting information. Quentin claimed that he had not met Shannon on the day of her disappearance, but these text messages proved the opposite. On the day Shannon went missing, the two of them were texting each other and agreed to meet up. That means Quentin was lying to the investigators and to her parents, and this new piece of information made Quentin the prime suspect in the case. While continuing to look through the messages in Shannon's watch, the investigators found that not everything was perfect in her relationship with Quentin. There were messages that proved Quentin had been abusive towards the mother of their unborn child. This kind of treatment from her lover came as a shock to Shannon. Quentin apologized for his behavior and pleaded with her not to leave him. Shannon suggested that they should take a break from their relationship. All of this information, as well as the fact that Quentin had a criminal record, led the investigators to suspect that he was not a good guy. Quentin had been on parole from prison, in which he had been held after committing a robbery. He has been arrested multiple times for assault and misdemeanor offenses. According to Shannon's parents, they had been mistrustful of Quentin lately, as they saw that their daughter was almost always in a depressed mood. Quentin was emotionally unstable when it came to the baby Shannon was expecting. After Shannon notified her parents that she got pregnant, they met with Quentin, and he pledged that he would look after both Shannon and the baby, claiming that he had long wanted to have children of his own and things like that. However, according to Anshumani, a few days after that conversation took place, Quentin texted her some strange messages saying that he was wrong and that he didn't want this baby. He wrote that it would be better if Shannon had an abortion. Police tried to track Shannon's cell phone and learned it was last active on the afternoon of April 13th in the area where Quentin lives. Shannon's mother noticed the severe bruising on her arms one day and asked how it had come about. Shannon started crying and explained that she had been beaten by Quentin. He had gotten into her vehicle and began beating her with his fists. Even though her parents requested that their daughter break off her relationship with Quentin, Shannon eventually forgave him and went back to dating him. Equipped with all this information, investigators grew anxious that they would not find Shannon alive. They promptly requested a search warrant and headed to Quentin's house. At first glance, the place did not appear to have any evidence to suggest that it was a crime scene. It was clean, and there were no signs of a struggle or broken furniture and objects. Forensics sprayed the first floor with luminol and found nothing. However, when they went down to the basement and sprayed luminol there, the walls and floor glowed. There were marks all over the place, which made it clear that Shannon was most likely no longer alive. Quentin Neal was arrested and taken to the police station. Before starting to interrogate him, the investigators examined the contents of his phone and discovered that he had been searching for lie on the internet. He was apparently planning to hide evidence of the crime by using this chemical. During the questioning, Quentin kept claiming that he didn't know where Shannon might be and that he had no connection to her disappearance. However, this time the investigators had solid evidence, and Quentin started to alter his testimony. Eventually, he said he was willing to confess to everything. According to him, he had indeed taken Shannon's life, but what really surprised the investigators was that he said he had been acting in self-defense. He stated that Shannon arrived at his house that day to discuss their future and their child. They began to argue, and that's when, according to Quentin, Shannon walked into the kitchen and took a knife and a gun that had been kept there for emergencies. Shannon began to threaten him, and that's when he thought he needed to act fast. A struggle broke out between them, and Shannon ultimately ended up dead. Quentin proceeded to emphasize to the investigators that he was acting in self-defense. The investigators weren't really believing his story because he didn't have any defensive wounds on his body, but they still continued to listen to him. According to Quentin, when he recognized that he had done something that could not be undone, he panicked. In the basement of his house, where everything happened, he stored a large suitcase, which he used to try to hide the evidence of the crime. Quentin Neal brought the police to a storage unit about 6 miles from his residence. That's where he had hidden the suitcase. Detectives discovered Shannon's lifeless body there. Her wrists and ankles were tied with duct tape, making Quentin's story of self-defense even more absurd. Forensic experts determined that Shannon died from 2 bullet wounds to the head. In addition, there were wounds on her body caused by a knife. Shannon's parents' worst nightmare came true when detectives informed them of the discovery of their daughter's body. On April 18, 2018, Quentin Neal was indicted for taking the lives of Shannon Money and her unborn son. There was sufficient evidence gathered for the court to reach a guilty verdict. Based on their correspondence, on the day of her passing, Shannon had gone to Quentin's home to discuss her pregnancy. They began to argue, and Shannon never managed to come out of Neal's house again. The trial was supposed to start in the spring of 2019, but a few days beforehand, attorneys and court officials received anonymous letters that caused the trial to be delayed for 3 months. The letters claimed that someone other than Quentin Neal was responsible for Shannon's death, but a judge later ruled that the letters were not relevant after the author of the letters was identified, since one of Quentin's friends wrote the letters to try to help him and confuse the investigation, but that attempt was unsuccessful. Quentin Neal was facing capital punishment. He denied the charges brought against him and maintained that he had been acting in self-defense. 15 months had elapsed since Shannon's death. Her family hoped for justice and tried to remain positive. Shannon's mother, Anshu, tried hard to keep positive memories alive. "Be positive and don't lose hope," said Anshu Mani. "We had planned that maybe in our lifetime we will build a shelter home." Then Shannon was into supporting against domestic violence and supporting women and children. Before that dream could become reality, Shannon Mani became a victim herself. On July 15, 2019, it was revealed that Quentin Neal had reached a plea deal with the investigation. He admitted his guilt in depriving Shannon and her child of their lives. According to the terms of the deal, the prosecutors dropped their efforts to seek the death penalty for him. On July 17, 2019, 28-year-old Quentin Neal was sentenced by the Milwaukee County Circuit Court to 2 concurrent life sentences. He will have no eligibility for parole, and thus will spend the rest of his life in prison. At his sentencing, Neal remained silent, never answering why he committed the crime. "Justice is served. The only thing we're happy about is that he won't be able to hurt anyone else," Shannon's mother Anshu Mani said. Shannon's parents want to prevent future tragedies like this one. "We couldn't save her, but there's many other Shannons that we can help, and if I'm able to help one Shannon in my lifetime, it will be a blessing." Shannon dreamed of opening a shelter for women and children. According to her parents, they plan to keep this dream alive and open a shelter in her memory. In this video, we take a look at events that took place on January 13, 2019. Surveillance cameras captured 17-year-old Agustina Imvinkelried all alone, leaving a bowling club she had gone to with her friends. Several hours later, it became evident that Agustina was missing, and her family started looking for her. Shortly thereafter, she became the topic of conversation in the small Argentine town of Esperanza, where she lived, and news about her soon spread throughout the country. Agustina was born on June 6, 2001 in Esperanza, where she lived with her big family. As the youngest of her parents' 5 children, she always received preferential treatment. It is a common fact that the youngest child in the family is always given more attention because of their age. Agustina was described as sociable, kind, and always smiling. Just like most young people, she enjoyed hanging out with friends, whether it was at the movies, bowling venues, discos, or simply with a ukulele in her hands. Esperanza is a small town of slightly more than 40,000 inhabitants, with most of its residents knowing each other. The town's limited amount of entertainment options contributed to the fact that all the young people there inevitably ran into and knew each other in one way or another. Thus, Agustina's parents got worried but were not afraid for her, permitting her to go out and spend time with her friends, their only condition being that she must stay in touch and send her whereabouts. On Saturday afternoon, January 12, 2019, Agustina's father dropped her off at a friend's house where a group of about 6 people were planning a get-together. The girls had arranged that once everyone was gathered, they would head out together to a nightclub and bowling center called Teos. Agustina told her father that she would spend the night at a friend's house after exiting the club and come back home in the following afternoon. She was dating a guy named Nahuel. They seemed to get along well and their families knew each other. That night, at about 1 hour before midnight, Agustina messaged Nahuel and asked him to go to the club, but he refused, telling her that he was tired. Later, the young man would come to regret staying home that night. Agustina and her friends were having a great time at the club. They had carefree fun, danced, and enjoyed the music. By 5 a.m., the friends had decided it was time to leave, but Agustina encountered another group of her friends who were also at the club, and she decided to spend some more time there. Thus, the group separated. Her friends headed home while Agustina continued with a different group of friends. At 5:40 a.m., a surveillance camera captured Agustina walking out of the venue carrying a cell phone. Upon leaving the premises, she went to a fast food stand. Agustina waited for her turn, received her order, exchanged a few words with an acquaintance, and proceeded towards the road. The friend's house where she was going to spend the night was not far away, so Agustina decided to walk there. It was getting bright, and she seemed at ease about her safety. There were no sidewalks, as you can notice, and one could only walk along the side of the road. It is unclear if Agustina had been drinking alcohol that night, but the footage shows that even though she had high-heeled platform shoes on her feet, she walked quite steadily. She only veered slightly to the side when approaching the driveway, but this isn't surprising considering the site is an unpaved road with rocks. She might have just tripped. In addition, it should be noted that in the Club Teos, there is an age division. One zone is reserved for those under 18 years old, so alcohol is not sold there. Agustina eventually never arrived at either her friend's house or her own home. Her parents had always been aware of her location because she had always told them. This time, however, when morning arrived, they noticed that their daughter did not text to tell them that she had made it to her friend's house and that she was all right. So they became worried and tried to reach Agustina but didn't manage to do so. Her number was unavailable. The parents knew that she was expected to stay the night at a friend's house, so they contacted her friend, who informed them Agustina had not returned from the club. The friend also told the troubled parents that Agustina had remained at the club with another group of people. After contacting all of his daughter's acquaintances and finding that no one had any idea where she might be, Agostina's father called the police and also started searching for his daughter on his own. Daniel M. Winkelried was a well-known man in town, being the president of a local soccer club and owner of a small company for manufacturing and selling furniture. When they learned that he was in distress, many locals volunteered to assist with the search. Agostina's friends were able to raise awareness of the case via social media, resulting in it being covered on television news programs. Having commenced the investigation, and with the knowledge that Agostina had been at Teo's club all night, police officers headed there to speak to potential witnesses and examine the surveillance camera footage available at the venue. Aside from footage showing Agostina walking towards the road, this revealed nothing new. The officers then, aware of which way she had gone, began questioning people that lived by the roadside, along with the staff of various businesses in the area. It was possible that somebody had seen or heard something, and any kind of clue was significant. One of those who heard about Agostina's disappearance through social media was a friend of hers named Brian. After noticing the big number of posts devoted to finding Agostina, Brian contacted her father Daniel and told him that he had seen Agostina outside Teo's club around 6 a.m. He had been driving along and spotted her standing on the side of the road speaking with the driver of a silver car that had stopped next to her, a few hundred meters away from the club. Brian proceeded down the road, but he immediately grabbed his phone and called Agostina. He asked if she was okay and whether she might need a ride home. She said she was fine, and that the man driving the silver car had stopped and warned her that it was not safe to be walking on this road as she might be hit by traffic. She accepted Brian's offer to give her a ride and stated she was going to a friend's house. There was a gas station a few hundred meters from where Brian spotted Agostina, so he decided to stop there, wait for her, and fill up the car. When Agostina didn't show up at the gas station 15 minutes later, Brian decided to go get her himself, but she was nowhere to be found. His efforts to contact her were also unsuccessful, as she did not answer. He didn't give it much thought at the time, assuming that Agostina had just gone right to her friend's house and had forgotten that he was waiting for her. Given all these facts, the primary clue was a silver car. Brian couldn't say for sure what brand and model the car was, but according to him, it was fairly old. The man sitting in the driver's seat could have possibly been the last person to see Agostina. The possibility that he might have been linked to her disappearance was also not excluded. When the police tried to track Agostina's cell phone, they discovered that the last time it picked up a signal was from a tower in the same neighborhood as the Teos Club. With the club being on the outskirts of town, there were a lot of vacant lots and fields, which is where the search teams concentrated their attention. Of all the organizations along the road Agostina was walking along, only this gas station had surveillance cameras. Daniel had gotten there to look at the footage and ascertain whether or not his daughter had reached that location. Considering where her friend's house was located, Agostina was bound to pass by the gas station. After Daniel explained the matter to the gas station attendant and asked for help, the attendant, being a father himself, showed him the footage the camera recorded that morning, almost losing his job as a consequence. Later, the gas station owner decided to dismiss him for allowing an unauthorized person to view the footage without permission. When the town's residents learned of this, they organized themselves and started refueling their cars elsewhere. This tempered the gas station owner's anger. He reinstated the employee and issued an apology to him and the residents of Esperanza. When Daniel reviewed the footage captured by the gas station's cameras, he did not find his daughter on it. It appeared that Agostina never got there. However, the footage did show the very same old silver car that Brian had previously described. It had gone past the gas station at about the same time Agostina was walking along the road. It was a Renault car, and Daniel figured out who it belonged to. Its owner was the 39-year-old Pablo Trionfini, a municipal employee, more precisely, a garbage man who lives under a kilometer away from the gas station. He had no prior criminal record, but had come to police attention on several occasions. The first time was when his ex-wife reported him to the police for beating her. This resulted in a court order prohibiting Trionfini from approaching his ex-wife. He was then arrested a second time for breaching that order. Both of these incidents happened in